learned solving systems of equations by elimination. We've learned the substitution method, correct? And our number one goal each time is find a way to make an equation with two types of what? Unknowns. Example, x and y, into an equation with what? With only one type of unknown, x or y, correct? That's our number one goal. When solving systems of equations, that's your goal. We learned how to do that by substituting, solving for one of the variables, right? And then plugging it into the other equation. And therefore you created an equation with either just x's or an equation with either just what? Y's. We did 2 sets of worksheets on that. Today we're going to do what's called the elimination method. I'm going to call it addition. First step. Line your equal signs up and add the two equations together. One, if one of your variables add to 0, go to step 3. 2, if one of your variables does not add to 0, go to step 2. Pick a variable you want to add to 0. Multiply either one or both equations by a number so that that variable adds to 0. Important. Keep the equation balanced.
So to keep it balanced, does that mean we have to, if we do it to one side, we have to do it to the other?
Exactly. Now, repeat the first step. Add them together. If one of your variables adds to 0, then you get to go to step 3. If not, go right and try step 2 again. This is one of those ones, until we sit there and we do it, You know, and we do a problem, the steps are gonna sound really vague and really hard to understand. There's no doubt about that. Okay, can I unfreeze that? Or are you guys still writing?
We're good.
There we go.
Thank you.
What?
Right.
How do you do?
Third and fourth step?
Yes. Oh,
Impossible.
I didn't write down the fourth step.
Third hadn't even been long enough up there for you to write.
I can't really see.
Let's start with an example. How about this one? Negative 4x minus 2y is equal to negative 12. 4x plus 8y is equal to negative 24. Now, do you see how I lined up my equal signs? When you add equations together, you can think of it like this. All eyes up here. Once you've got this written down, I want all eyes up here. We're going to go over this. You basically add the left side of the equation to each other. Basically, you make this into one equal sign, right? And you add these two together. Everything on the right side together, you add everything on the left side together. It's that simple. So the first step is add them together, make them into one equation, and see if either your variables go to one. Well, I've got them lined up where I've got like terms right underneath each other, don't I? You can rewrite your equations that way if you'd like. You just have to make sure, you know, whatever's on the left side stays on the left side, whatever's on the right side stays on the right side. You can't decide to move something from over here to over there without doing that by subtracting both sides or something to that effect. Now, what is negative 4x plus 4x? What is negative 2y plus 8y? Does everyone agree? Is equal to, what do I get here? Negative what? Now, second step. Or in that step says if one of your variables add to 0, go to step 3. Did one of our variables add to 0?
Yes.
Which one? X. So I go to step 3. Step 3 says what?
Solve the unknown.
Solve for the one unknown that's left. You've made one equation into an equation with what? Or two unknowns into what? One unknown, right? You've done your number one goal. So now, you don't really need the 0 here, do you? Solve for that unknown. How would I solve this equation? 6y equals negative 36.
Divided each by 6.
Y is equal to what?
You did negative 6.
How easy was that? So I found the negative 6. What's my next step? What does it say in the fourth step? Well, we found the variable to be, plug it back into one of the original equations for that variable, and solve for the other one. It doesn't matter which one, just one of them. Which one do you want to plug it into, the top or the bottom? Bottom? Okay, so we've got 4x plus 8 times, and I'm going to plug this as y equal to, so I'm going to plug what? Negative 6 in for y. I'm plugging it right there, right? Is equal to what? Negative 24. Basically, here's the deal with both of these methods. Substitution is easier, the second step's easier. With elimination, once you add them and one of them add to 0, usually your equation's easier to solve with elimination, the first equation. But the second one's a little harder. So 4x minus what? 48 is equal to negative 24. What do I do now?
Add 48.
4x is equal to what? 24. Divide both sides by?
4.
X is equal to what?
6. Wait, what?
Make sure and write that down. That's pretty easy, isn't it?
Wait, I thought it would be
It's
6,
6.
not 8.
I tricked him.
He messed me up.
Oh. Isn't that pretty easy?
Yeah.
It is very easy when it sets up easy like this. So if you think about it, it's set up perfect, isn't it, for when I'm to add to 0. It's not always going to be that way. Once you get that written down, that's the next one we're gonna do. Any questions on the top one? Are we ready to cover it up and go to the bottom one? Okay, I don't want you writing anything down here. I want you paying attention to what I'm doing. What's your first step? Line up your equal signs. We got that done. Add them together and see what you get. And pay close attention to this. Details do matter. What'd you get here?
15x.
What'd you get here? Plus 4y is equal to what? Did that do me any good? I didn't create an, so did I create an equation with one unknown? No. If one of your variables does not add to 0, then go to step 2. Okay, now the next step is pick a variable and multiply it by a number that will make it to where they'll go away. One of them will add to 0. Now, if you're looking at this and you're thinking, I got to multiply either one of these or both equations by a number to make it where they'll add to 0, which one looks like the easiest? Is there something you could change? We were really close, weren't we? If this bottom one, let's say this one right here was a negative 2y, would they have added to 0? So you could leave the top one the same, right? What would I have to multiply this by to make it a negative 2y like I want it to be? If I multiplied that by a negative 1, that would get the job done, wouldn't it? But what did I say to do? You got to make sure you keep it what? Balanced. If you multiply that by negative 1, you better multiply what? Everything in this equation by what?
Negative 1.
So this becomes a negative 2y. This becomes a what? Negative 8x equal to a what? See how that changes things? That wasn't too bad either, was it? When you add them together, this becomes 0, does it not? Leaving just what? Negative x is equal to a negative 6, is that right? Because isn't that a negative 1x? Everybody okay with that? And that's a negative 6. What would I do to solve for x? Divide both sides by what? X is equal to a positive what? Now step 4 is exactly the same. Pick an equation, plug it back in, and see what happens. Which one do you want to do, top or bottom?
Top.
So we're going to put that in for now. We did it y last time, but this time we solved for what? X. Pay attention to which one you solve for. So it would be 7 times what? 6 plus 2y is equal to 24. What is 7 times 6?
14.
What would I do now? 2y is equal to a what? You sure? Is that right? Can someone tell me why that's wrong? It needs to be a negative 18. Don't forget that.
And then divide
Good
by
job on the
2.
subtraction. Divide both sides by what? Y is equal to what? Negative 9. Write that down. It's not too terrible, is it? be some on here that are harder than others. I'm gonna kinda stick with some of the ones that aren't quite as bad, and then we'll work our way to the others, okay? And some are gonna be pretty obvious, and we're gonna work along and do more worksheets on this. And some of the ones that, on the worksheet you're gonna have today, the last ones will look more confusing than they actually are. I'll do number 20. But if you had 8x plus 14y is equal to 4, and negative 6x minus 7y is equal to negative 10. Remember when we were doing substitution method and I told you guys that sometimes they're going to kind of set it up to try to lead you a certain way, that one way will definitely be easier than the other? Ashton, wake up. Why'd you move? Why'd you move?
I hadn't thought we were done with this.
We're not.
Okay.
Now, obviously, when you add these together, what happens? 2x plus 7y is equal to negative 6. I want to see that every time. I want to see you guys add them together. That won't work, will it? Okay. Pick a variable that you think would be the easiest to multiply a number by and make it add to 0. Basically, I always looked at the smaller of the two. Like I looked at 6. Can I multiply 6 by a number and get it to be 8? 6 times 2 is 12. That one's going to be hard, isn't it? So that one's, I can still like multiply them both by a number to get them to be the same number, opposite sign. But I'm going to skip that one and try y before I start trying to mess with x. How about here? The smaller one, will it? Can I multiply it by a number to get to the larger one? 7. Can I multiply it by something to get 14 as the answer?
Yep.
How could you make a 7 into 14? By multiplying by? Okay, so my top one, the thing I'm not going to change, it looks like, I'm not going to change anything about the top, am I? I need to make this a negative 14y if I pick the y, don't I? How can I make a negative 7y into a negative 14y? By what? Multiplying by what? A positive 2, because positive times a negative would give me a negative, right? 2 times 7 is what? 14. So once I figured out what I have to multiply by, now it's just a matter of keeping the equation what? Balanced and multiplying the rest by the same thing. So this becomes a what? Can you guys tell me? Equal to, what does this become? Does everybody see that? Now when I add them together, what happens? I get negative 4x plus what? 0 is equal to a negative 16. Is that what I want? Divide both sides by what? X is equal to what? Positive 4. Plug it into the top or the bottom equation? Okay. Right there. So it's 8 times what? 4 plus 14y is equal to 14. What am I going to do now? 32 plus 14y is equal to 14. Subtract 32. 14y is equal to, what's the answer there?
Isn't it 4? Is equal to 4? Is that 14?
Oh, it is 4, isn't it? I don't know why I wrote 14 there. So I get what? Negative 28. Divide both sides by what? Y is equal to what? So the answer is 4 comma negative 2. Write that down. You've got 3 examples to work with now. I'm going to do number 20 on your worksheet. I'll tell you what, I'll do number 10. We good? Put your phone up, please. Want it away. Want it away. Let's look at number 18. The funny thing about it is, guys, as long as your equal signs are lined up, it doesn't really, you don't have to put it in the form that it was originally in. And what I mean by that is you'll see most of the problems when you do elimination have the x and the y on one side, the number on the other, right? Well, as long as you keep your equal signs lined up and just keep straight what's on one side and what's on the other, and it helps to usually have your like terms underneath each other. This is basically what we have here, correct? Now, if I was to add these together, negative 5x plus 0 is just what? These two would be what? 2y. Negative 12 minus 3x. Now, here's the thing. It is tough. You're going to have a hard time getting rid of the x's with an x on each side of the equal sign. But since you only got y's on one side, you may be able to find a way to get rid of your y's. And I want you to look at the y's. What could I do there? What could I multiply to where my y's would add to 0? So what you're saying, you guys are saying is leave the bottom the same, 0 equal to 3y minus 24 minus 3x, okay? And you want me to change the top one, right? And you're saying if I multiply that by 3, I'd get negative 3y here, wouldn't I? Would they then add to 0? They would, wouldn't they? Well, how do I make a negative y into a negative 3y? I multiply it by 3. But what allows me to do this? I have to multiply what? Everything by what? So I'm left with a negative what? 15x on the left side. Did that. And this becomes what? Plus what? 36? Does everyone agree? So now when I add the left side, what do I get? Negative 15x plus 0, just 15x, right? This becomes 0, and I get, what's this? Minus 3x. So I've got this equation, negative 15x is equal to 12 minus 3x. Is that an equation you can solve for x? Yeah. You just now have to do what? Add 3x to both sides, leaving negative 12x equal to what? 12. Now what do? Divide both sides by negative 12. X is equal to what? Negative 1. Okay, which one you want to plug it into, the top or the bottom?
Bottom.
Bottom? Okay. So it would be 0 is equal to, I've got to put it in here for, I found x, right? So I've got to put it in right there. So 0 is equal to 3y minus 24 minus 3 times whatever x is, and it's negative 1, right? Everyone agree? So 0 is equal to 3y minus 24 plus 3. 0 is equal to 3y minus what? 21? You guys agree? See how we combine? We multiply, then we combine like terms. What's the only thing left to do? Add 21 to both sides. I'm left with 21. Come over here. I'm left with 21 is equal to what? 3y. Divide both sides by, and y is equal to what? So the answer is negative 1 comma 7. That's number 18. Write that down. Let's get to work.